Pearl Davis versus Trent Horn. I want to say that what we have here is these two people without the solution. That's the problem. They've just debated, I guess, whether marriage is, quote, a bad deal. Well, uh, Pearl Davis is right that you don't want to enter a contract that someone is given an incentive to get out of, which is what marriage is today. For women, they get basically paid to leave. So Trent doesn't have a solution to that is the problem. He's just saying you're still better off getting married. And I tend to agree with that. So MGTOW is bad, but Trent is bad also because he's just saying get married anyway. The solution would be the not to do clickbait here. That's why I want to come right out with it. The solution is procreation primary, because now we have a definition of the contract, the conjugal act that is objective and you can define it. That's what Pearl says she wants. She just wants the conjugal act and obedience. Trent says Trent says the purpose of marriage is not the conjugal act. He'll say the purpose of marriage is, or the conjugal act is for the expression of marital love. No, it's for procreation. So when you say it's for love, that's a non-defined contract, because you can't put love in a bottle or in a calculator or on a legal document. So this is where Trent falls short, because he can't offer the justice. At any rate, that was my main point, I guess, that procreation primary is the solution here to both of their problems. Not that Trent is saying he has a problem, but he kind of does, because he can't define what marriage is. And I'm going to get to that in a second. So the solution, when you call procreation primary, what you end up doing is you are now bringing marriage out of the subjective la land and into objective, which means you've got to bring back those separation courts. That I hope someone can get the memo to Pearl Davis, that because I heard she's getting a little wishy-washy on Catholicism, or I think the marriage thing could lead her back if someone could get her the memo that the church does want justice and does have a source of it, which is separation courts. Those existed up until the time of the Beatles, and they were abandoned because if marriage is love, there's no justice, there's nothing to define. So that's the solution to MGTOW. Basically, you have to marry someone that understands that it's a salvation issue. You cannot take your marital contract to the civil forum. And if it's not a contract, there ain't nothing to talk about. And that's where Trent is out to lunch. The reason why he continues with his covenant language is because he's big on NFP, which means you have to have something other than procreation as your primary purpose. And that's where the hang-up is. You can't get rid of your NFP, so you can't say you can say procreation is primary, but actually, like Margaret Sanger, you are having it as secondary. I'm going to show a little of why Trent Horn is wrong on why he's saying the definition of or the reason for the conjugal act is an expression of love, and prove why it's wrong. Let me see if I can get to that screen. Okay. So let's pop through this. This is the new commentary of the Code of Canon Law. This is the Bible for all canon lawyers, mainstream. Everybody in your diocese uses this. This is what everyone looks to, okay? I've talked to some of these guys here, these authors. I think one or two are dead by now. But anyway, they say the quiet part out loud here, and they admit what the problem is, which has started this whole annulment revolution and divorce revolution. It's because marriage has no definition. And I'm going to prove why why Trent is wrong and every bishop in the country is wrong, because Christ says, I am the same yesterday, today, and always, which means the essence of marriage is also unchanging. And your canon lawyer would have to admit that, but then they just come right out and say, actually, we're changing it. That's the problem. That's why you have no objectivity. Oh, or you don't have no objective consent. So let's go through this real quick. Following the teaching of Vatican II, which was not teaching, Vatican II taught nothing. in Faith and Morals that's binding. They said a lot of stuff, and at the end they said, we never said Simon Says. This stuff isn't binding, okay? So there is no teaching of Vatican II. Then they say jurisprudence gradually began to recognize that the essential rights and obligations of marriage extend beyond the perpetual and exclusive right to the body for acts and themselves suitable for the procreation of offspring. So that's the traditional, that is the definition of marriage. The perpetual and exclusive right over the body for acts. That's exactly what Pearl Davis wants in her definition of marriage, which is why I think if somebody could get to her and tell her the Catholic Church is on her side in Transmodernist along with all the bishops, she might be into that. That would be so cool if we could get her to catch on to the fact that separation courts are Catholic. The divorce needs to happen in the church so that the church brings divine law into the separation decisions. That's what Pearl would be like, all excited about that. I just can't get to her. I've tried on Twitter, whatever. Jurisprudence gradually began to recognize. Jurisprudence cannot define nature any more than Bruce Jenner can define nature. It is what it is. You don't get to say the essence is determined by jurisprudence. No way. That's like saying we can determine when human life begins based on what the Supreme Court says. They have no jurisdiction to decide when human life begins. They can make a law, but they have to respect natural law. They have to abide by it, but they're bound to natural law, just like the Roman road of jurisprudence is bound by natural law. But they're saying, no, we are natural law, and we're going to do it ourselves because the spirit of Vatican II, bro. All right. So then we'll bring this in for a landing here. Okay. So this is the old code. Yes. Considering only the only true essential obligation. So none of this truly stuff. I hate that word. Not in law. I don't care about true love, true this, that. It's just, look, it's the only essential obligation in the jurisprudence based on the 1917 code. Essence can't change. Okay. So we just got to get this down. Essence can't change. All right. I don't care what code it's from. Essence can't change. Did I say that already? As the range of marital obligations considered essential expanded. Crazy train right there. Warning, you cannot expand essential obligations because nature is fixed, unchanging. So when you start saying marital essential obligations are expanded in their list or scope or whatever, now you are redefining marriage, which is illegal and you can't do it. And when you do that, you can't have a contract because you can't define what you are redefining and going all over the place with. So we have marriage, AWOL, crazy chain, flying in space, okay? That cannot be defined. How deep is your love? There's, what's the answer to that question? No, you can't define it. Jurisprudence quietly abandoned the analogy of physical impotence, which as a detriment, to cause what do you call it? Annulment. Jurisprudence doesn't get to abandon anything. Jurisprudence ain't jack. It's just what judges decide. They don't get to decide this. It's nature. Can't do it. It's like jurisprudence told God they're going to take over and God can go take a vacation. No, no, no. All right. To be capable, okay, post-conciliar, okay, jurisprudence has continued to require that spouses enjoy the capacity. See, they added to nature. So while Vatican II said you got to be able to the right over the body, it has tended to cast this essential obligation in more personalist terms. All that means is you can't have the marital act without charity. And the charity is never defined. So charity is number one. Procreation is number two. No matter how much lip service you give to this, it is a redefining of the essence of marriage, which is why Trent cannot offer any justice to Homegirl. Blah, 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 obligation, gift. Okay. The essential obligation to the gift of conjugal love. Yeah, groovy. What the heck is that? You can't, I guess I'm repeating myself. This is, I already told you, this is the whole problem with this whole debate is this is not being discussed. We're talking about marriage, but no one even defines it between Matt Fradd, Trent, and of course, Pearl can't define it. She's on the edge of Catholic anyway. And when no one's defining marriage, you're just gonna talk about the periphery and the details, and it's not going to get anywhere. Okay. Here, let's go on. So, two persons should anything else? Yes, two persons before anything else should be willing to be friends, love, and respect. That's all nice, but you can't put that in the law because you can't, as someone has said, you can't legislate morality, which means that's true and false. You can't make friendship, love, and respect a legal condition because you can't define it, so you can't consent to it. But I'm going to get to that more in a minute. It's good. It's juicy. Hang on, you guys. To trust, relate, communicate with each other, and to be capable of self-revelation and understanding and loving. Where are my love beads? We need some incense. This is so happening. This is absolutely sick. It's super bad because when the little kids need mom and dad together, the mom typically says, you can't self-reveal yourself and understand and love me, so you're not capable. Therefore, there's no marriage and there's no contract because no one can define this, so I'm out. And this is where MGTOW and Catholic MGTOW keep on going. It is impossible. Okay, so here, this is page 1302. So let's go down to 1357. I got so many more notes, but we're probably not going to get to them on this video because it'll take too long. This is juicy. Listen up, all you annulment people. It is impossible to make a complete listing of the rights and obligations that spouses have toward one another in the marriage. If it's impossible to list the rights, it's impossible to consent to them. Just like if you're going to buy a car, it's impossible to tell you what the price is, then you can't buy it. You can say, I buy the car, then you say, it costs $18 million. And if you don't pay immediately, we take the car. You can't have the car. Oh, dog, no. Out. Chill out. These dogs want to be with me. We had so much fun today, but now I've got my green screen happening and we just can't do it. I'm a dog magnet. Isn't that funny? Anyway, so back to my point. It is impossible to make a complete listing of the rights and obligations. That's because we have now gone from objective, perpetual, and exclusive. Let's see. I wanted to find where it says they call it the object of consent. Hang on, let me find that. Essential rights extend well beyond the formally articulated. Okay, here, which was formally articulated as the formal object of consent. That's a key word. What does that mean? That's the thing you consent to. What are we looking at with marriage? Marriage is marriage. Marriage, that dweem within a dweem. Okay, no, it's the formal object of consent. If I'm going to buy a latte, that's my formal object of consent. We're going to pay the money for the latte. It's not, we're going to buy a really nice, cozy, warm feeling of something and a latte, and we can't define the cozy, warm feeling. So maybe we're not capable of paying for it, or we're not capable of delivering that cozy, warm feeling. Who the heck knows what that is? Okay. So that formal object of marital consent, we got to get back to that. It is impossible to make a listing of the rights and obligations now with the spirit of Vatican II because they have taken the right over the body for acts and they call it the right to be capable of self-revelation, understanding, and loving. And no one freaking knows what that is in the law, and they never will. So they're admitting this. It's impossible to be able to tell you what the object of consent is. We cannot and will not, and it ain't going to ever happen, be able to tell you what the object of consent is. So your marriage is, it's hanging on a prayer, man. It's whatever happens. And if it, that's why there's no more contract, because you guys didn't consent to anything that anyone can identify. You just said, let's get together and see how this works out. Okay. And this all has its origins when you bring contraception into the picture, and then later NFP, and then you have to make love legal. It gets all crazy. And that's another video I'm going to make about the nut job book, or not Theology of the Bio. That's not so cool. Love and Responsibility. Woo! Wild. It'll give you a headache. Love and Responsibility is a tangled web of weirdness, which effectively says procreation is not primary, but they take 350 pages to say it or whatever. Okay, and examples of such rights and obligations have been determined by jurisprudence. Examples of such rights and obligations have been determined by jurisprudence. Jurisprudence doesn't get to determine rights and obligations. Nature does through God. God says marriage is the right to the body. That's it. So these these judges have played God, and they said, oh no, now we have to have self-revelation, understanding, and loving, So that means mutual respect, support, cohabitation, and an interpersonal relationship on tap. Where's my interpersonal relationship? Let's define that. You can't. So let's go back to this. Back to Pearl and Trent. We need to solve this MGTOW Pearl problem and Trent problem. Trent is baked. I don't know what it's going to take. He's got to hang on to that NFP so much that he's never going to be able to get off this unless something changes. He gets grace or something. Therefore, he's got to stick with the conjugal act is for marital love. It's not for babies. And he's never going to be able to come up with justice for homegirl's main complaint, which is the marriage contract is incentivized to break it. I think that's basically a wrap then for this. I'm hoping someone can talk to Pearl Davis and let her know that the Catholic Church teaches that you have to have a separation court. You have to have the bishop's permission to divorce. And or grave sin, and that's it. Other than that, there ain't nothing. Marriage is dead unless you can back up the contract, and you have to marry someone who is highly motivated to not go to hell for reneging on the contract, and therefore, if there is a separation needed, it's got to be through the bishop. Probably got a few other points I got to make, but anyway, that'll do it. As usual, also, the main difference between me and everyone else, especially Timothy Gordon on YouTube, is I always respond. I answer all the questions, and I will argue with you for 6 months if that's what you like. And you can make as many points as you want, and I will respond to all of them and back up everything I'm saying. But I'm glad we got this done. I just need to put that out there to, again, try to bring it in for a loop or a landing that the Catholic Church is the answer for Pearl Davis and her MGTOW problem, and Trent Horn needs to come back to reality from his Theology of the Body La La Land, ace the NFP, and define the marriage contract. That means connect it with biology. Otherwise, you cannot condemn Bruce Jenner and friends, and contraception for that matter. Till next time, peace, baby.